Well, the City of Vancouver has presented a report on how to make outdoor festivals safer. Now, that follows the Lapu-Lapu Day tragedy in April, where 11 people were killed at a spring street festival celebrating Filipino culture. The report calls for stronger barriers, clearer entry and exit points, better training for organizers, and changes to how some public spaces are designed. And to discuss those recommendations, we're joined by the CEO of Alliance Security Group. Ashley Meehan joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Ashley.
Good morning.
I appreciate you being with us. Your initial thoughts about the recommendations contained in this report, what did you think overall?
Yeah, I thought they covered the key aspects, particularly with regards to hostile vehicle incidents, and even with their points of increasing the requirements for it. You know, I've been involved in a number of events, particularly on street level events this summer, and we have seen the increases in that. So they have certainly taken steps actively in the field as well.
Let's talk about some of the details in this. The report emphasizes hostile vehicle mitigation guidance and permanent barriers. What are the key considerations when it comes to implementing those kinds of protections in those public spaces?
The key aspects you have to consider will be the particular location of the event. Obviously, if you're inside a venue as opposed to on a street level exposed area, the attendance, the number of attendance of the people coming in, the demographics, and then you have to consider the access points, how people are getting in and out of the space, and then obviously emergency situations. You know, how quickly you have to get a vehicle in or out, or the people in or out of that space. And then you're looking at the environmental considerations, as well as considering the risk and threat levels of the event. You know, is it just a small event, or is it an international related event?
Well, right. And here in the city of Vancouver, we have, in the case of the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival, it was a small street festival, the majority of it being held on school grounds, but the food trucks parked on the street, which is where, those people were injured and killed. I mean,
Mhm.
and we have much smaller festivals than that. I mean, in my neighborhood, they closed off a side street intersection, to paint a sort of mural on the street a couple of weeks ago. Do you have to roll in armored cars to stop traffic when you have something like that happening?
No, and that's one of the considerations they put in there, and you have to looking at what's the threat level of the event, what area is it in, number of people there. So they definitely look at the different aspects and what type of barriers do you have to put into place. Whether it's the heavy cement blocks, is it putting a vehicle across the street,
Right.
traffic control people, all those sorts of considerations.
The euphemism hostile vehicle, I'm having some difficulty with because, of course, there's a person always piloting that vehicle. And yesterday, the mayor called for the province to do more to address the role of mental health when it comes to the risk of these sorts of things happening. If the challenge of cars is addressed, what is there to prevent individuals from, attacking through other means?
Yeah, you're right. And we've seen incidents around the world where it isn't a vehicle, it's someone pulling out a knife and stabbing people. So you do have to consider the different levels of those sorts of threats. And it's not just a matter of having the vehicle control barriers in place. You have to look at your screening processes, searches, and whether it's metal detectors or bag searches or pat downs, and those are things to consider as well in the space. And again, those things all tie back to the risk level of the event. And some events will have political ties into it. Some will have countries from around the world attending. Some will just be associated with various political topics that people might want to make a statement. So all that has to be taken into consideration when you're looking at the event, and who's going to be involved and at what level do we have to start actually putting those measures in place.
If someone is intent, though, on harming people by any method, any means, I mean, is it not just simply difficult to stop somebody from doing that?
It is, and as you say, there's different ways that people could do that. So it's it's very difficult to say we've got 100% safety measures in place. It's just, pretty impossible. You have to look at, how do we mitigate that risk as much as possible? But if something does happen, how do we then consider how quick that response will be to manage that
Right.
situation? So that includes having, whether it's police on site, additional security on site, having eyes out there looking and looking for potential problems that might occur.
The city plans to expand training and support for event organizers. What kind of training do you think would be most critical right now?
Um, I think the areas that need to be considered will be part of it will be the planning of the event. So what measures have to be put in place for looking at the setup and the layout, so that they can understand what kind of measures they need to consider. Um, but you also have to look at the involvement between the various stakeholders. So you can have a great plan in place. You can have met with all the various stakeholders, and everything can look great. But if you don't implement that plan properly, that's where problems can occur. So that's tying in the communications between all those groups. It's also making sure that the individuals on the ground actually have an understanding of their roles as well. So if you have an individual managing an access point,
Mm.
and they're not understanding what their duties are, that can be a failure right at that point there. If that person isn't able to manage someone that comes in and is perhaps getting upset or wanting to cause a problem or is up, and it could
Mm.
be any reason they're just having a bad day. But if they can't manage and de-escalate that situation,
Yeah.
that's where something could escalate and cause a problem. Um, so you need to consider the training of the actual total event and how to implement it, as well as the training of the individual people that are on the ground
Right.
dealing with the guests coming in.
And from a security standpoint, Ashley, what is something do you think the report hasn't mentioned or perhaps hasn't emphasized enough?
Well, this report, as it says, the focus was um, particularly on the vehicle incident type situations. So that's where a lot of the effort was spent. And I think the areas where, which is kind of tying to what I was just saying, that I think the considerations need to be put into place as to um, the actual training of the individuals in the field that are dealing with situations, so that they actually understand how to de-escalate and mitigate risk,
Hmm.
as well as being able to identify potential problems, and looking for issues or things that are out of place, as well as and we go back to, in this case, the mental health issue with this particular incident. Obviously that's been raised as far as, that we need to look at how mental health is managed and
Yeah.
dealt with, as well. And those are things that have been brought up, but it's really just recommendations at this point.
Ashley, it's very good to hear you this morning. Thank you for taking the time with us. We appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
Take care.
Thank you.
That's Ashley Meehan, who is the CEO of the Alliance Security Group. So, for more on these changes and what they could mean for future events, Melissa De Genova has been good enough to join us in studio. She is Vice President of Italian Day on the Drive and a former Vancouver City Councillor. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Stephen.
Thank you for being with us. Your initial thoughts on the recommendations from this report?
Well, I did read the 33-page report last night and the 8 recommendations. And I understand the city has to stay in its lane. There's only so much the city can do.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that certainly was missing from the report, and again, it's not something that the city can control, is the actual cause. I mean, we can talk about the symptoms. We're not in a public safety crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, we feel at Italian Day, we've always felt that we have, a good amount of public safety. We work with the VPD, the City of Vancouver. But really what was missing from the report, because it's not in the City of Vancouver's lane, was addressing the mental health crisis and the causes of what we're seeing. When we talk about, mitigating these incidents with vehicles, it's a terrible, terrible tragedy what happened at Lapu-Lapu Day.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent some time this year at Italian Day on the Drive honoring, the memory of the victims and inviting, Filipino BC to come and speak. But what it comes down to is, right after our event, right, which, we've had, and I know CBC has reported that we've had, our costs have quadrupled since 2019 for policing. It's not sustainable, not just for Italian Day, but for other events as well. But then, we had the party on the drive. The City of Vancouver stepped up, gave us our $75,000 grant. The Vancouver Police stepped up, and even the extra cost that they contributed because they knew we couldn't in the short amount of time between Lapu-Lapu and Italian Day. At the end of the day, the province canceled our $50,000 grant just weeks after the festival. We didn't receive that. So I understand that's a cultural grant, but if it doesn't go here, we take it from the budget there.
Right.
And we're not the only ones. We hear from other large family-free, or family-friendly free festivals and events in Vancouver that they're facing the same challenges as well. So the report from the city updating the special event policy, standardizing early safety planning, a lot of that's being done. I think it's important we continue to look at that, but we also need to make people feel safe. And, that's what I've been trying to do.
And so because your event was really the first major event to occur after this Lapu-Lapu Day tragedy, what changed for your organization then? Well, I mean, what did you look at as far as security goes? How did you enhance it?
Well, we have a fantastic, event production team in Grace Choi Events, working closely, our board and the production team with the City of Vancouver and the Vancouver Police Department. And the Vancouver Police Department, they really stepped up and, put over $50,000. They ate that in their budget of more resources that we couldn't and wouldn't be paying for this year. We don't know what that looks like for next year. But the Meridian Archers, actually, we heard from people that they were happy not to see the large dump trucks, that kind of made them, always feel a little bit unsafe. So it's great that we have these new Meridian Archers, and we had the
You're
light.
talking about the kind of barrier, just for people who don't know what a Meridian Archer is. It has nothing to do with the bow and arrow.
No,
Okay.
You're very right there. But they have been used, not just here in BC and for our events now moving forward, but they've been used worldwide. And we do have fantastic, I can say as a former Vancouver City Councillor, I know that the City of Vancouver works very closely with the VPD, and they look at the risk assessment and the threat assessment. This isn't new since Lapu-Lapu, but certainly I'm hearing from people that they're scared. At Italian Day, we were concerned that there wouldn't be a high enough attendance. We were happy to see that people came out and they did enjoy, but we're still hearing from people that they're not feeling safe.
Sometimes, and we've talked about this in the past, the perception of safety is safety to many people. Often the more police officers they see, if they see that there are very visible barriers, they see that the area is being tightly controlled, they might think that they're safe, that they're safer. Is that part of it? I mean, is part of this convincing people that they're safe?
I mean, Italian Days tried to be a leader in that, certainly. I mean, back in 2018, we were criticized for having too much security. And the VPD, that wasn't something we requested. We stay in our lane. The VPD did have officers out with carbine rifles, and there was criticism. That was reported in the media. But, now I look at that, and that may help people feel safer. The other thing I have to note is, the province, they've announced, and, we have a minister of community safety who is out there announcing these 120 beds for mandatory treatment. But, what we've heard from the VPD is just last October, I don't know the updated number, but there's 400 individuals in Vancouver who really need that mandatory care, who are ticking time bombs. So when we look at, unfortunately, right after Lapu-Lapu, it wasn't reported widely. There was a vehicle that tried to drive into the Pacific Coliseum at the P&E during Cirque du Soleil. Had they missed that pillar, they would have been in the concourse, and it could have been a tragedy to the size and scale of Lapu-Lapu. So I don't have all of the answers, but we at Italian Day are working with the city and the VPD to make sure everyone feels safe. But cost is a barrier, and the province canceling our grant this year certainly affected us.
You read the report, as you said, all 35 pages of it, and is anything you think in there that's missing? Is there an obvious omission for you, something that should have been in there that isn't?
Well, I just don't know that the city can do this, but it would be nice. I mean, the city gives us our $75,000. They work closely with us. But if the province could work with the city together and put that money together globally. So, we weren't left hanging 2 weeks after our festival. Other event organizers, I'm sure, and boards feel the same. But if there's a way to come together to make sure that there's a sustainable plan for these free, fun family events, especially in the economy we're in right now, I think that would not only help in safety and planning, but it would help in the costs that we incur as boards.
Melissa, thank you so much for coming in this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Stephen.
You take care. That is Melissa De Genova, Vice President of Italian Day on Commercial Drive.